Order. I call Secretary Brandon Lewis to make a statement. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to make a statement on the findings of the Ballymurphy inquest. I want to put on record the government's acknowledgement of the terrible hurt that has been caused to the families of Francis Quinn, Father Hugh Mullen, Noel Phillips, Joan Connolly, Daniel Teggart, Joseph Murphy, Edward Doherty, John Laverty, Joseph Corr and John McCurr. I also want to pay tribute to the great patience with which these families have conducted themselves during their determined campaign, which has lasted for almost 50 years. The Prime Minister is writing personally to the families and expresses deep regret to the First and Deputy First Ministers of Northern Ireland yesterday and has apologised unreservedly on behalf of the state. The findings of the coroner are clear. Those who died were entirely innocent of wrongdoing. The events at Ballymurphy should never have happened. The families of those who were killed should never have had to experience the grief and trauma of that loss. They should have not had to wait nearly 5 decades for the judgment this week, nor have been compelled to relive that terrible time in August 1971 again and again in their long and distressing quest for truth. Over the course of the Troubles, more than 3,500 people were killed and tens of thousands injured, with families torn apart forever. The majority of those killed were innocent civilians, like those on the streets of Ballymurphy. The vast majority of those who served in Northern Ireland did so with great dignity and professionalism. But it is clear that in some cases, the security forces and the army made terrible errors too. The duty of the state is to hold itself to the high standards at all times. When we fail to meet these high standards, we must recognise the hurt and the agony caused. There is no doubt that what happened on those awful few days in Ballymurphy also fuelled further violence and escalation, particularly in the early years of the Troubles. The government profoundly regrets and is truly sorry for these events, and how investigations after these terrible events were handled, and for the additional pain that the families have had to endure in their fight to clear the names of their loved ones since they began their campaign almost 5 decades ago. To make lasting change, actions are required as well. The Belfast Good Friday Agreement was the defining action that allowed Northern Ireland to begin to move away from violence. But the events of the past do continue to cast a long shadow, as we have seen. Those who were killed and injured during the Troubles came from all communities and also included many members of the security forces and the armed forces. Immense and difficult compromises have been made on all sides since then, including the early release of prisoners, which was so difficult for many people to accept. To a very large extent, Northern Ireland has moved away from violence. So we stand by those compromises and the progress made towards a more peaceful society. Yet the desire for families of victims, to know the truth about what happened to their loved ones is strong, legitimate and right. The campaign for justice in Ballymurphy has reminded us all of this, if we needed to be reminded at all. 23 years after the signing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, thousands of murders remain unresolved and many families still yearn for answers. With each passing year, the integrity of evidence and the prospects of prosecution do diminish, and the government is not shrinking away from those challenges. We are determined to address them in a way that reflects the time that has passed, the complexity of Northern Ireland's troubled history, and the reality of the compromises that have already been made. But above all, we are determined to address it in a way that enables victims and survivors to get to the truth which they deserve. We must never ignore or dismiss the past. Learning what we can, we must find a way to move beyond it. And the coroner's findings this week are part of that very often painful process. Mr. Speaker, this government wants to deliver a way forward in addressing the legacy of the past in Northern Ireland, one that will allow all individuals or families who want information to seek and receive answers about what happened during the Troubles, with far less delay and distress. We want a path forward which will also pave the way for wider societal reconciliation for all communities, allowing all the people of Northern Ireland to focus on building a shared, stable, peaceful and prosperous future. I commend this statement to the House.